You ever notice how some people can make a decision in 30 seconds and others need 3 days, two Google searches, and an imaginary argument that hasn't even happened yet? Those people aren't confused. They're thinking constantly. If you're someone who thinks too much, you already know what that feels like. You replay conversations in the shower. You rewrite texts before sending them. You analyze tone, pauses, eye contact. And sometimes you're exhausted, not because you did too much, but because you thought too much. And here's the part nobody tells you. Overthinking isn't a personality flaw. It's a pattern, a very specific cognitive pattern, and it usually develops for a reason. Let's start with what's actually happening in your brain. There's a network in your brain called the default mode network. It activates when you're not focused on the outside world, when you're reflecting, imagining, remembering, predicting. In people who think too much, this system is highly active. That means your brain doesn't just experience life, it narrates it. After a simple interaction, your brain says, let's review. Why did they hesitate before answering? Did I sound awkward? Should I have said less? What are they thinking about me right now? To someone who doesn't overthink, that seems unnecessary. To you, it feels automatic. Overthinkers often have a more sensitive error detection system in the brain. The anterior cingulate cortex, the part responsible for spotting mistakes, tends to fire more intensely. In simple terms, your brain is really good at detecting when something might go wrong. That sounds useful, and it is. You probably catch details others miss. You anticipate problems before they happen. You prepare, you plan. You rarely walk into situations blindly. But there's a trade-off. When your brain is wired to scan for errors, it doesn't just detect real threats, it starts detecting imagined ones. A delayed reply becomes rejection. A neutral face becomes silent judgment. A small mistake becomes a defining flaw. This isn't weakness, it's hyper-forecasting. Your brain is constantly running simulations. Neuroscientists describe this as predictive processing. The brain's main job is to predict what happens next. Some brains do this lightly. Others run 20 scenarios at once. And if you can imagine 20 possible outcomes, you also imagine 20 possible failures. Now here's something surprising. Overthinking is often linked to higher intelligence and creativity. Why? Because you can see more possibilities. You don't just see A and B, you see A, B, C, D, and the hidden option E that no one else noticed. But more possibilities don't always mean more peace. They mean more mental traffic. And that traffic can turn into paralysis. This is why overthinkers struggle with decisions. You don't fear choosing, you fear choosing wrong. Psychologists call this maximizing behavior, the tendency to search for the best possible outcome instead of a good enough one. Maximizers spend more time analyzing options and often feel less satisfied afterward, even when they make great choices, because your brain keeps whispering, what if there was something better? But here's the deeper layer most people miss. Overthinking is rarely just about thinking. It's about control. When life feels unpredictable, thinking becomes a way to feel prepared. If I analyze everything, maybe nothing will surprise me. If I imagine every outcome, maybe I won't get hurt. For many chronic overthinkers, this pattern started early. Maybe mistakes weren't tolerated. Maybe emotions were unpredictable. Maybe you learned that reading subtle cues kept you safe. So your brain adapted. It became vigilant. It became analytical. It became careful. Psychologists call this hypervigilance, a heightened sensitivity to potential threat. As a child, that might have protected you. As an adult, it shows up as constant mental scanning. You're not just living in the present, you're evaluating it. And here's something that sounds contradictory. Overthinkers are often deeply empathetic. Because you're constantly imagining perspectives, you're skilled at putting yourself in other people's shoes. You think about how your words land. You worry about being misunderstood. You replay conversations not just to judge yourself, but to understand others. You care about impact. But when empathy turns inward without balance, it becomes self-criticism. Instead of thinking, how did that make them feel? It becomes, why did I say that? What's wrong with me? And that's where thinking shifts from awareness to anxiety. Another important piece of this pattern is identity. People who think too much often tie their self-worth to competence. You want to be prepared, you want to be thoughtful, you want to get it right. So when you make a mistake, it doesn't feel small, it feels like proof. proof that you're not as capable as you thought. And your brain hates that feeling. So it analyzes more, it replays more, it promises next time will be perfect. But perfection is a moving target, and the more you chase it mentally, the more exhausted you become. Now here's something powerful. Overthinking isn't the absence of confidence. It's often the presence of imagination without boundaries. Your brain is powerful enough to construct entire futures in vivid detail. That same ability fuels strategy, creativity, innovation, deep conversation. Some of the most insightful people you know probably think too much. The difference isn't whether they think, it's whether they let thinking control movement. There's a concept in psychology called cognitive fusion, when you become so entangled with your thoughts that they feel like facts. If your mind says this will go wrong, you don't experience it as a thought, you experience it as reality. Overthinkers tend to fuse with their thoughts more easily. Every thought feels important, urgent, worth solving. But not every thought deserves solving. Some thoughts are just mental weather. They pass. And here's the truth most overthinkers need to hear. Your mind isn't broken, it's protective. It learned that careful equals safe. But at some point, protection turns into limitation. When you think too much, you delay action, and action is the only thing that disproves fear. You can think about sending the message for 3 hours, or you can send it. You can imagine every possible failure, or you can gather real data by trying. Overthinkers often believe that more thinking equals better outcomes, but after a certain point, more thinking just equals more fear. And yet, there's something quietly admirable about this pattern. You don't skim life, you process it. You reflect, you question, you examine your own behavior. You want growth. That's rare. The world has plenty of impulsive people. It has fewer reflective ones. The goal isn't to stop thinking, it's to know when thinking has crossed into looping, to recognize the moment when analysis stops being useful and starts being avoidance. Because sometimes overthinking isn't about getting it right, it's about avoiding the discomfort of uncertainty. And uncertainty is part of being human. If you see yourself in this, understand something. You're not dramatic, you're not weak, you're not incapable of confidence. You have a highly active, highly imaginative mind. And when that mind is directed towards building instead of predicting disaster, it becomes one of your greatest strengths. Thinking deeply is not the problem. Staying stuck there is. This is human patterns, and the way your mind works isn't random. It's learned, it's shaped, it's adaptive. The real power comes when you understand the pattern and decide how to use it. If this resonated with you, you'll probably connect with the psychology of people who struggle to let go, because the root is often the same pattern in disguise. I'll see you in the next one.